Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Accelerate Your Performance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jana Pilcher, founder and president of Studer Education. In my years of doing this podcast and talking with partners in the field, one of the tactics that I hear mentioned most is rounding. Why? Because it makes such a difference. It's a simple process with a powerful impact. Most of you have heard of rounding in education, but if you're new to rounding, let me explain it. Rounding is a practice borrowed from healthcare in which medical professionals have short, intentional conversations to check in with patients. In education, leaders at all levels can have these kinds of short, intentional conversations to check in with others. And the results of these conversations are highly engaged employees, families, and students who feel valued and heard. Strong workplace relationships and performance-driven systems focused on student success. It's a powerful process. And today I'm excited to talk with Marnie Harrington, one of our partners who has seen tremendous results in rounding efforts and who uses K-12 rounding, which is the rounding technology tool we talked about with Samantha Sands last week. I think you'll love hearing Marnie tell her district story about using rounding and its impact on their work and district culture. She's a highly effective leader in a dynamic district. So let me introduce Marnie. Marnie Harrington is the Deputy Superintendent and Chief Academic Officer for the Oxford School District in Oxford, Mississippi. With over 20 years of experience in public education, she has served Oxford School District in multiple roles, including teacher, assistant principal, and most recently as principal of Della Davidson Elementary School. Under her leadership, Della Davidson earned national recognition as a 2021 National Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. Marnie brings a deep understanding of instructional leadership, continuous improvement, and collaborative goal setting to her current role, where she oversees academic strategy and supports continuous improvement efforts across all schools in the district. It's so great to have Marnie on our show today. It's with great pleasure that I welcome Marnie to our show today. Marnie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about rounding today. And I know you all have done quite a bit of work in this area. And Marnie, you all have done some unbelievably great improvement work in your district. So, I just want to say congratulations on the heavy lifting that you've done there as well.
Thank you so much. It has been a journey, but it has been a rewarding journey. So we are excited about the direction we're going in.
That sounds good. So let's talk a little bit about why rounding matters to you and your team. In the introduction here, I talked a little bit, reminded our audience what rounding was. So we're going to jump right in. But just why rounding matters to your team, why you value it, and what benefits do you see that are coming from it?
Absolutely. I can truly say that rounding has changed the culture of our organization. It truly has. I think that anytime you're in a large organization, I think there is always a goal to have two-way feedback so that it's not always a top-down approach and that you're able to get feedback from those who are closest to the work. But to be honest with you, before we partnered with Studer and before we adopted the practice of rounding, we didn't really have a system to do that. We wanted to do that. And so we would send out different ways and not really consistent processes of getting that feedback and doing that. And rounding has truly changed the way that we get feedback intentionally from our stakeholders. Also, the process of rounding allows us to identify barriers in the moment, which is huge when you're talking about the work of student achievement and operational efficiency. And so being able to do that has been just really, really helpful. And it allows us to celebrate bright spots that we're seeing in the work. I know teachers and educators always are working hard, but not always receive that recognition. And we don't celebrate the bright spots a lot. And rounding has been an intentional way for us to do that and to celebrate what we're seeing and the gains that we're making before we measure our goals at the end. And so it's been really, really great to just have a system built around those crucial pieces of feedback.
Yeah, and so good, Marnie, in terms of what you're saying. I mean, first of all, intentional, you use that word quite a bit. It's an intentional process that we use. People are consistently applying that process.
Mhm.
And just what I also love in terms of what you've said, it's that immediate feedback. And what you also said that really I believe is so important is you act on it. Because we can get feedback all day long, but if we don't act on it, people don't think that we're doing anything or that we hear, and then they don't really want to give us any more feedback. you know?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I would say when we first started the process of rounding, it took people just one time to see that we were really going to do something with the feedback, and then that made the next rounding conversation that much more impactful. And so it
Yeah.
was it was a big difference.
It is, and that's what really has made it valuable to you. So let's talk a little bit about recently we have developed the K-12 rounding app, the way to collect information. So before we're writing it on paper and trying to manage that or manage within own systems, but we recognized a need that our partners had, our leaders had, and so developed the K-12 rounding app. So I know you all have used it exceptionally well. So how has that helped support your teams, and can you share your experiences a little bit with K-12 rounding?
Absolutely. So we were rounding, but everybody was collecting that information a little differently. Everybody was closing those feedback loops a little bit differently. It was hard for us to really see the consistency across the organization. And the K-12 rounding software has streamlined that entire process. So shout out to Samantha and Marty.
Yeah.
They have been fantastic working with us through the implementation process, but then also super responsive in saying, what are the needs of your organization that you're seeing that we can improve and make better as well? And so that's been, once again, a great intentional two-way feedback, but it has intentionally allowed us to, like I said, consistently track those rounding conversations. It's given our leaders a system of organization where they can collect issues, they can identify and address barriers, and then we can also share those insights across our leadership team so that across the organization, we're able to see the themes or common barriers and then really tackle those across the organization. I think the thing from a district leadership perspective that's been so valuable is that it has truly, the software itself has truly allowed us to hardwire our expectations. And
Yeah.
that's been important because when everybody had their own system of tracking and their own system of scheduling and getting it done, it was really hard for us, other than just with qualitative feedback, to really see what was happening. And now we've added the quantitative piece in addition to that qualitative input from our leaders, which has really allowed us to hardwire this and really provide accountability across our organization that we say, this is an important process to our culture and we value this. And this is how we're going to go about tracking and implementing this. And so the K-12 rounding software has been huge for us this year.
Yeah, that I love the insights there because it's the consistency of leadership practice. It really helps us get to the outcomes that are most significant. And that I love the way you talked about building the accountability in for all the right reasons so that we're making sure that our people are getting what they need. One thing I've heard, Marnie, is I think you all get the gold star for the recognitions that you've provided. So I don't talk a little bit about how you've been able to use that tool to recognize people.
Absolutely. One of the things, so on the survey we give each year, our employment engagement survey, there's a question about receiving recognition for the work that you do. And that's always an area that we seek to improve. And the K-12 rounding software has really helped us streamline that and really make that a priority. So, as one of the major rounding questions we ask is, who's been helpful to you? Who do you want to recognize? But the K-12 rounding software provides a recognition button right within that rounding documentation. And so, as a leader, you want to give the person you're rounding with your full attention because it is a personal conversation,
Mhm.
but it's hard on the back end to go back and remember all those recognitions and make sure that you're doing all those. And so, having that recognition built right into the rounding software is huge because in the midst of that conversation, we can recognize somebody, send that out to that person. They get an email immediately that just says, hey, in a rounding conversation, you've been recognized. and it has made a world of difference. So after our first rounding meetings that we had, so we schedule those periodically throughout the year, but after our first set of rounding meetings that we had over 1,000 recognitions
Good gracious,
in
Marty.
K-12 rounding,
Yeah,
which was
that's
just,
great.
I mean, it was just a great way to see the teamwork and intentionality that is happening within our organization, and to be able to highlight that was huge.
Yeah, so good. So good. So let's just kind of go back to rounding. And as you look at recognitions and being able to improve processes or address barriers kind of in that real time that you were talking about, how has that helped build culture and trust within in your district?
Absolutely. I said, I told you earlier, I really believe that rounding has changed the culture of our organization. I think that it has allowed us to connect to those closest to the work. And from a leadership perspective, it has allowed us to connect on a personal level, and has also allowed us to connect on a goal level, on a goal oriented level, as far as rounding for outcomes, which is what we're working on strengthening now. And so I think that really what we're seeing is that our employees realize we mean it when we say we want to hear from them. We want
Yeah.
to know what's working and what's not working. And we want to know in the moment so that we can address those things. And so I think that not only has it built a culture of trust where they feel like they can come to their supervisors and their leaders and say, "Hey, I don't understand," or "I need help with this," or "It's not working well." And then it also allows them to get the support and the resources they may need, which once again just goes back to empowering those to do the work they need to do at any level. And I think so in building a culture, not only has it strengthened the culture on a personal level, but it strengthened the culture on a trust level, and then also an ability for us to connect in real time to address problems and issues. And so without that intentionality, I truly don't think our cultural surveys would be as high as they are.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the measure that pays off, right? I mean, that's,
Right.
when we're really looking at the tactical things that we do, the surveys really give you the measures that matter that help you understand, hey, it really is moving the needle in our culture. So, good work in measuring that as well. I'll end with this question, Marnie, because I think it's really important. I've found too, when we start rounding, I always tell people you can't stop because people like it so much. If you stop, then that's even worse than if it didn't start sometimes. But it's not a one and done. This is a process that's embedded and what we would call hardwired within your organization. What have you put in place that maintains that as a priority, as a practice where you can truly maximize the impact over time that's sustainable?
Absolutely. I love that you said that too, just about once you start, you don't want to stop. Because
Yeah.
one of the first conversations we had with our principals was making sure that they scheduled their rounding meetings efficiently and talking about how they were going to share the load of rounding meetings. Some of them have over 100 employees. And so whether or not they were going to divide that up with their assistant principals or how that was going to look. And overwhelmingly, the feedback we got from our principals was, no, I want to do the rounding myself. I want that personal connection because they have seen the value in that. And so now, to be quite honest, a lot of times they bring their assistant principals into those rounding conversations and they do them together. Not only once again to coach those assistant principals, but to have that personal connection. And so that's been a really
Right.
encouraging part of that. But we have had to build systems once again to support our leaders in making sure that number one, we prioritize rounding, and that number two, that we schedule it appropriately so that they can still maintain the operational efficiency that they need to maintain in doing that. And so a couple of things that we've put in place is that we follow a regular rounding schedule. And so we, at the beginning of our admin institute, at the beginning of the year, we give them a rounding schedule for the entire year. And we say, this is our system of rounding. This is how many times we expect you to round with the people you supervise informally or formally, or whether we're rounding on an outcome based on action steps. And so we give that to them at the very beginning of the year. And we ask them to go ahead and schedule those meetings, because just like everything else in education, if you're not intentional about scheduling it and prioritizing it, it's going to fall to the wayside. And so we start that at the very beginning. That's what we start our school year with. We have a system in place for how often we round with classified staff and certified staff. Those expectations are a little bit different, but we still prioritize those. And then once again, we have the K-12 rounding software, which has been huge in helping us hardwire that accountability. And then last but not least, I would say we've put in place this year, which has really been impactful. We've put in a monthly professional development for our building leaders. And what that has allowed us to do is to address things they may need support with in rounding. So, for example, some administrators are new to rounding, some administrators are new to the building, some administrators are new to their role from assistant principal moving to principal, just those different dynamics. And so, what we want to do is make sure that once again, we're meeting them where they are. And so, monthly, we have conversations about what it looks like when we talk about providing resources in rounding conversations, or what that looks like when we're rounding on an outcome and we want to talk about adapt, adopt, or abandon action steps. And so really providing that PD to our leaders monthly, taking them out of the building and saying, this is so important to us that we are intentionally scheduling time for you to learn and grow and to be able to ask questions so that you can lead this work effectively, has really been a game changer for us.
Yeah, and gosh, so important. And again, congratulations on that, because sometimes we think that leader development is a nice to have, but leadership is everything in terms of really, as you know,
That's right.
just it's so important to build the culture, to get to the outcomes. I mean, we can't do it without leaders. And
That's
sometimes we don't prioritize their development and their time together and learning from each other. That's all learning, as something that truly is a need and intentional and a must have. So I can't stress that enough. Just thanking you all for what you contribute to your leaders and in turn to your teachers and then your students and your families. It's a cascading down.
That's right. Well, absolutely. It's been so impactful that from an ownership perspective, when you talk about empowering people that are closer to the work and then supporting them when they do that work and having those systems in place, it's been a game changer for us. And we're seeing the needle move. And so we're just continuing the work and we're excited about it.
I love it. That's where that flywheel spins, and that's where you get
Right.
your energy. Those
That's
results
right.
give you energy, but it's the work that you put behind to get those results. So, thank you for your leadership, Marnie, and thank you for your partnership. We're just delighted to work with the Oxford School District and to work with leaders like you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank y'all. It has been an amazing journey. So it's been great.
Marnie works in a district that believes in the voice and value of each person. And Marnie is leading the way in using rounding to support that belief. You heard Marnie say, this has been a worthwhile journey and it is moving the needle. It's that mindset that demonstrates to those in the district that they are valued. And this feeling of value builds a culture in which everyone can thrive. To Marnie and the Oxford School District, thank you for leading the way. And to each of you, thank you for being a part of the community of leaders, educators, and learners who seek to make education environments places of empowerment and growth. As we work together toward this goal, let's make each day and each conversation matter. Have a great week, everyone.